I thought both sides had some input into the schedule, but
I suppose the argument is that you'd think they would have had longer in the UK before they came, and they would have had a week or so to settle in here before they played.
That's their problem, isn't it? They should have done it.
Yeah. He said that by flying to, where do they fly? They flew to Dubai and had some time. Then they flew to Melbourne and had some time. And then they got here and he said that'll mean they'll get over the jet lag. And then yesterday he said, we're not really over the jet lag.
That's not a very good plan to get over jet lag, I don't think.
It isn't.
No.
But actually, I can report that they look quite happy. I walked through, presumably the Lions, hopping off their bus.
The Pride. You walked through the Pride.
I did, yeah, hopping off their buses yesterday because they're staying in a very nice hotel. So they're not really slumming it. They're staying in a nice hotel in Auckland. And I walked past them all as they were jumping off their big red bus yesterday, and they seemed quite happy and jovial and friendly, I've got to say.
Good.
Yeah.
No, you wouldn't expect them to be on Airbnb, would you?
No.
Actually, if we get to, I've got that down to talk about if we get to it. But before I do, I'd like to just mention the naughty Dunedin students. I don't think it is certain that they are students, but I think they've been fingered in this. They're thought to have damaged a $500,000 art installation called Pathways, and it consists of 5 figures and a cross. It's modelled on the national emblem of Scotland. It's a very handsome-looking installation, modelled on the St Andrew's Cross, and it's on the campus near the Clock Tower. And you may think there needs to be a CCTV camera to watch out for hijinks like these, but the Otago University Students Association voted against a plan to place 60 more CCTV cameras at a cost of $1.25 million around parts of north and central Dunedin, and it was a tight vote. 3,700 voted, 51% didn't want CCTV monitoring and 49% did. It's not binding on the university.
Is the point of the cameras to stop people doing naughty things to statues?
No. It's just that I thought I'd mention that at the top. The point of the cameras is to prevent nasty incidents in students hospitalised and women sexually assaulted and female students who won't now walk home from the library at night. So that's the trade-off, isn't it? We don't want all the cameras, but we don't want all the problems as well.
I think you got to live with the cameras today.
You think?
Yep.
I just find these conversations exhausting, that we have to keep thinking about this, and as women that we have to keep thinking, is it safe for me to walk that way?
It should never be.
I shouldn't have to think that.
But we're always told that, with a common conversation on the panel, we're told that crime is going down, but that would have been an unthinkable situation, wouldn't it, 20 years ago? You wouldn't have had that, consideration of walking home from the uni at night. There would have been the odd incident, but you probably wouldn't have felt afraid?
As a woman, yeah. Always, your whole life you do. I mean, I've had this thought myself, actually. Do men ever even think that? Do men ever think, gosh, is it going to be safe for me to walk that way at night? Probably not.
Probably not, no.
But
I think the cameras, I think they're well justified in that environment.
Yeah.
There are an awful lot of texts. I'm afraid we're out of time. There are an awful lot of texts coming in about sausages.
Well, we'll have to talk about it some more, some other time.
Very well, yes, we won't fit much in before John comes along. Nikki Bazant, lovely to have your company on the panel today.
Thank you.
And John, very nice to see you back.
Thank you.
So I hope you'll both come again soon. Thanks for your listening to us. I was going to say company. Thanks for your company today, everybody, and we're back tomorrow. As usual, John Campbell standing by with Checkpoints.
Kia ora everyone. Tonight, US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, his whistle-stop tour to New Zealand. And who is he? We look at his biography. Allegations of racial abuse by a schoolboy rugby coach in a Shirley rugby car park. The Ministry of Education responds to allegations a primary school sent a 10-year-old girl home from school when she began menstruating. Public outcry as the Avonhead Rotary Club continues to ban female members. Expressions of interest from companies prepared to keep the kiwi in pineapple lumps. Plus the latest on the London Bridge attack, the Melbourne siege and Bill Cosby's trial. And also Todd Nile from the America's Cup. Thank you for being with us. We will be back after Katrina and the news.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, good afternoon, ko Katrina Batten aho.
The United States has told New Zealand it intends to increase its involvement in the Asia-Pacific region. The US Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, today met with the Prime Minister, Bill English, and the Foreign Minister, Jerry Brownlee, in Wellington. Afterwards, Mr Tillerson told media the US was fully committed to the region, despite its withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement and the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal.
I don't think anyone should interpret that the US has somehow stepped away from these issues or is seeking to isolate itself. The United States views this region of the world extremely important to both our national security interest and our own economic and prosperity interest.
Rex Tillerson said trade discussions are already underway with some countries in the Asia-Pacific. The police in Victoria say the gunman shot dead in last night's terrorist attack in Melbourne had a long criminal history and was out of prison on parole. The Islamic State group has claimed responsibility for the siege, in which a man was killed, several police were injured and a woman was held against her will. The ABC's David Sparks reports.
Police say 29-year-old Yaqub Khairi met an escort yesterday at an apartment building on Bay Street, Brighton, around 4 o'clock, and then shot a man working there. Chief Commissioner Graham Ashton says Khairi held the woman hostage for 2 hours before police shot him dead and rescued the woman.
He's come charging out, firing at police, and we've fired back at him.
Police say Khairi had a long criminal record and was acquitted over a 2009 terrorism plot to attack the Holsworthy Army Barracks in New South Wales. IS has published a statement via its propaganda arm which claims responsibility for the attack. The claim cannot be verified.
David Sparks reporting. The School Trustees Association says the family of a 10-year-old girl should not have had to pay for a sanitary disposal unit at her school when she began having periods. The school initially sent the child home because it didn't have anything in the girls' toilet to deal with used sanitary pads. The association's head, Lorraine Kerr, says no school has ever contacted them with problems about a student beginning menstruation. She says when a young girl began having periods at a primary school she was involved with, the situation was handled very easily.
We just went down to the local dairy, got a supply of sanitary products, talked to her, explained to her, phoned her parents, suggested she use the staff toilets as opposed to the school toilet to take away the stigma.
Lorraine Kerr says that left the girl feeling that what was happening was normal. Treaty Minister Chris Finlayson says not even the Pope would be able to help the Ngāpuhi settlement in its current state at the moment. The Prime Minister has told members of Tūhoranuku and Te Kotahitanga to sort out their disputes themselves without any help from the government. The Treaty Minister and the Office for Treaty Settlements will be removed from the Ngāpuhi treaty settlement process and a mediator will be appointed. Mr Finlayson says until Ngāpuhi members say enough is enough and want to get on with it, this will be the current state of affairs.
In my experience, the more people you send in there to try and help, the more difficult it is. I could send Pope Francis in there and he'd get nowhere either.
The Treaty Minister, Chris Finlayson. The Christchurch City Council is considering taking on fast food outlets by providing more free tap water and space for community orchards and vegetable gardens. It'll vote on the idea this month as a way of tackling what it's calling food deserts, places where it's difficult to find anything but junk food to eat. Councillor Aaron Kewen says this could be as simple as putting in more drinking water fountains and planting fruit trees.
Kids given the option will grab fruit off a tree. I think we all did it when we were younger, probably even got in trouble for it now and then. Well, we're going to take the opposite approach and make sure those fruit trees are growing in a lot of neighbourhoods and people can, steal fruit from the tree whenever they want.
Aaron Kewen. How to cut down on the number of cars clogging Auckland roads is under investigation. The Mayor, Phil Goff, says each car has an average of 1.3 people in it, and with 800 extra cars coming onto the city's roads each week, it's a huge problem. Mr Goff says they'll look at introducing T3 lanes on the motorways, where at least 3 people need to be in the car to use the lane. Encouraging apps for car sharing will also be looked at. It's 5:04. To sport, in the All Blacks lock, Brodie Retallick is unavailable for the Chiefs Super Rugby game against the Hurricanes this Friday due to headaches. Retallick suffered a head knock in their win over the Waratahs at the weekend. The Chiefs say he passed all his concussion tests and they're just being cautious.
The fickle English summer is the least of the New Zealand's concerns as the Black Caps prepare for their Champions Trophy match against England in Cardiff tonight. Black Cap Martin Guptill says they can't afford to think about the what-ifs if the weather does intervene.
We can't let that dictate the way we play. We still have to go out and do our things, to be aggressive and take it to the opposition. If we take a step back, then we've already lost the game before stepping out there. So we're just going to keep going the way we are.
Martin Guptill. Just the odd shower is forecast for Cardiff tonight. Team New Zealand helmsman Peter Burling has every confidence in his boat with strong winds forecast for the next few days of the America's Cup. Team New Zealand leads Great Britain 2-0 after BAR suffered a broken part to their wing this morning. The winds are expected to go close to the limit of 25 knots for tomorrow's 2 races, but Burling isn't concerned as they've trained in those conditions in Auckland.
I think for everyone here it's been the same. It's been a little while since we've all sailed in good breeze, but no, we're really confident with our boat and our equipment, and really excited about the next few days. Obviously it is going to be pretty upper limit, but these boats are built for that.
Japan and Sweden are 1-1 in the other semi-final. That's the news.
Mayor Sadiq Khan remembers the victims of the London attacks.
London stands in defiance against this cowardly attack on our city, our people, our values and our way of life.
But he isn't immune from Twitter attacks from Donald Trump.
Regardless of who is in the White House, Republicans or Democrats, we have never seen a president of the United States behave like this towards the elected official in another country that has just undergone a serious terrorist attack.
Keeping you up to date, Guy and Espiner and Susie Ferguson, Morning Report, weekdays from 6. Then, after 9, news as it happens. In-depth conversations with world-leading experts and the latest trends you need to know about. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Met Service weather through to midnight tomorrow. Northland, Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula, cloudy periods and scattered showers. Waikato to Kapiti, including Bay of Plenty and the central high country, mostly fine with isolated showers. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, a few showers, mainly about the coast, fine spells increasing. Waitat Upper, mostly cloudy with occasional showers. Wellington, cloudy periods, a few showers today, the odd shower possible tomorrow morning and evening. Marlborough, apart from the Kaikoura Coast, also Nelson, Buller and Westland, fine. Kaikoura Coast and Canterbury, cloudy periods and isolated showers. Otago and Southland, fine today, cloudy periods and a few showers tomorrow. Fiordland, rain developing tonight, clearing tomorrow morning, but a few showers remaining in the south. And the Chatham Islands, the odd shower today, rain developing later tomorrow. It's 5:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Thanks so much, Katrina. Coming up on the program tonight, the 10-year-old sent home from school for menstruating, accusations of racism in a rugby car park, and who is Rex Tillerson? Let's begin with his very brief visit to our shores, during which New Zealand was assured the US remains fully committed to the Asia-Pacific region, despite its withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accord and the TPP. The US Secretary of State, a former oil executive, of course, more on that later, met with the Prime Minister Bill English and the Foreign Minister Jerry Brownlee this afternoon. Much of their discussion centred around the US engagement in the region and the two countries' relationship with China. Here's our political editor, Jane Patterson.
Taking shelter from the rain under the front veranda of Premier House, Mr Tillerson was welcomed by local iwi, accompanied by Mr Brownlee. About an hour later, the Secretary and the Prime Minister emerged to brief waiting media on their discussion. Mr English said that included President Trump's announcement last week to withdraw the US from the Paris Climate Accord.
Our disagreement with the administration's decision over withdrawing from the Paris Agreement, and heard from the Secretary about the direction of climate change policy in the US.
Mr Tillerson took umbrage at the suggestion from a reporter President Trump was acting in an increasingly unpredictable fashion in relation to both the Paris Agreement and the TPP.
Well, I would take exception to your characterization of it being unpredictable. The President ran his campaign on the intention to withdraw from TPP and the Paris Climate Accord. I think he did take time and made very deliberative decisions to finally take action on both of those fronts. But clearly that also represents the will of the American people. There was very little support in the Congress which are the people's elected officials for either TPP or the Paris Accord.
He said the US had reduced emissions without the heavy-handed regulation of climate deals and would continue to do so unilaterally. Mr Tillerson said that policy decision had nothing to do with the lack of commitment to the region.
So I don't think anyone should interpret that the U.S. has somehow stepped away from these issues or is seeking to isolate itself. Indeed, one of the reasons I'm in the region, one of the reasons Vice President Pence has already been to the region, Secretary Mattis has been to the region, is to reaffirm to everyone that the United States views this region of the world extremely important to both our national security interest and our own economic and prosperity interest.
Speaking about regional security, Mr Tillerson said Chinese actions in the South China Sea could pose a real threat.
To build islands, and more alarmingly, to militarize these islands, threatens the stability that really has served China as well or better than anyone in terms of China's ability to grow its economy. It's been this very stable environment that has existed. These actions of theirs threaten that stability, and we ask that they cease those activities.
After the meeting, Mr English was asked whether he shared the view expressed by the Secretary in Australia that China was throwing its money around to influence countries in the region.
There's been a lot of discussion in recent times about the way China projects its influence, and in some respects it's attractive to a lot of smaller countries in the Pacific, but the terms in which it happens aren't always favourable. We focus on our own positive relationships with these smaller countries.
While this visit was taking place, a transatlantic spat was brewing after President Trump criticised comments the Mayor of London had made in the wake of the weekend's terrorist attacks. Speaking earlier in the day, Bill English acknowledged President Trump's unpopularity made it more difficult for the US to show leadership.
I think it does make it a bit more difficult. There's a lot of disagreement in New Zealand with some of the administration's policies, but there's always going to be shorter-term tension around politics. I mean, New Zealanders have for a long time not liked various presidents of the US and disagreed, for instance, with their views about our anti-nuclear policy for 30 years. But that doesn't prevent us confirming our shared values.
The Labour leader Andrew Little also met with Mr Tillerson and had some strong words about the President.
We've just seen yet again the clumsy, ham-fisted way that President Trump goes about expressing his views about these things. Why has administration or the staff around him haven't confiscated his cell phone or however many he has of them to get him off Twitter? I don't know, but he does that and he ends up with his foot in his mouth.
Mr Tillerson also encouraged New Zealand to support its actions to combat terrorism and put pressure on North Korea to abandon its nuclear weapons program. But Mr English said there was no specific request for New Zealand to increase its contribution to Iraq or Afghanistan, other than what was already on the table. Mr Tillerson was also asked about his president's tweeting habits.
The president has his own unique way of communicating with the American people and the world, and it's served him pretty well, and I don't intend to advise him on how he ought to communicate. That's up to him.
From Parliament for Checkpoint, Jane Patterson.
More on Rex Tillerson later and on the protests outside Parliament today too. 5:13. You're with Checkpoint. Thank you for being with us. Just a warning before we move on, whilst we're not going to say the whole words, we are about to use the censored version of a phrase that is by any measure offensive. The Shirley Rugby Club in Christchurch is tonight meeting under urgency to discuss allegations that the grandmother of a player in a junior team was called an effing black bee by a man believed to be a team coach. We've tried repeatedly to talk to anyone from the rugby club, but they've refused to be interviewed. We have spoken to the woman who's made the allegations and she repeated them to us. But she told us she received 2 phone calls today asking her not to talk to the media while an investigation takes place. Shirley Rugby Club responded to the complainant saying, because the altercation happened in a public car park, Shirley Rugby does not feel this warrants any further investigation. That letter was signed Club Secretary Shona Milne on the 23rd of May. Club President Roger Smith insists he only found out about the matter this past weekend and says the board is meeting tonight. We'd like to ask the club why it took so long to tell the Canterbury Rugby Union, its parent effectively, what was being alleged. That's something the union itself would like answered too. I spoke to Nathan Godfrey, the CEO of Canterbury Rugby, a short time ago.
We were made aware on Friday morning when this story hit social media, and certainly we've had no communication with the alleged victim or the club over the past week and a half. So we're really disappointed, given that we launched the We All Bleed Red campaign at the start of the season, and we've had no communication from either the alleged victim or the club. So, yeah, really disappointing, because that was about raising awareness, and it was about making sure that we speak up, and neither of those things have happened.
We All Bleed Red was in response to incidents of racism in and around Canterbury Rugby, wasn't it?
That's correct, that's right.
Okay, so there is absolutely no place for this. That's a statement of fact, and you were working very hard to stamp it out. Are you surprised the club didn't come to you earlier to tell you what was being alleged?
I am. I'm really, really disappointed, because a hell of a lot of effort has gone into launching the campaign and raising awareness and making changes to our governance process. And it's not until probably Monday morning that we received a letter of complaint from the alleged victim, and now we're in a position where we can follow through and process. And that process includes a complaints review officer who's been appointed to the case. They're currently investigating, and once we have all the facts on the table, then we'll follow that through and certainly take action where appropriate.
Right, your complaints investigator will talk to the alleged victim, right?
Absolutely, and the club, absolutely, both the club and the alleged victim.
It's my understanding the club's having some form of board meeting tonight where this will be discussed?
I understand that's the case. Again, I've had no communication with the club, no formal communication with the club, but I understand they've got a meeting tonight, and certainly over the next week or so we'd expect some sort of outcome. But yeah, I certainly can't comment on that judicial process. That's completely independent of the Canterbury Rugby Union.
And the Canterbury Rugby Union's not tempted to send along an observer or somebody to go to the club meeting tonight?
No, at this stage we haven't been invited, but I'm certainly open to that.
The issue, clearly the Canterbury Rugby Union is open to stamping this out. I mean, you're very much on the record, and you have been for some time. Do you think the club itself is? Because it seems the more we look at it, the less prepared they have been to really go on the record, to really front foot an investigation into what happened.
I'm incredibly disappointed with the response. To suggest that because it happened in a public car park, if it did happen, certainly is in my opinion, lacking in action. And I would have liked to have seen all the parties at least come together and have a conversation, because that clearly hasn't happened. The
facts, as reported by the press in particular, do you accept that they are a fair record of what occurred?
I really don't know. We've clearly received a letter of complaint. And that's consistent with the message that we've seen in the media over the past few days.
Right. Who's the letter of complaint from? Is that from the alleged victim herself?
That's correct. That's right, the mother.
And what does she lay out? The same stuff that we've seen in the press, for example, including the language that was used against her.
Yeah, that's right. I can verify that. Yeah, absolutely. It's consistent with all the media comments, and certainly with all the social media comments as well.
Okay. So if she was called those things, what would the attitude of Canterbury Rugby be?
I'm on record, and so is the union, as saying that we have a zero tolerance policy. So we're certainly going to be tested here in this case. If it is found, and we certainly can't preempt anything, but if it is found that this is the case, then certainly some strong action will be taken.
What sort of action do you think?
I really don't know at the moment. There's a number of options available to us, but again, I can't preempt that judicial process. We need to be fair to both parties until we have all the facts on the table.
Okay, and so when do you think you will have all the facts on the table?
Yeah, certainly in the next week we'd hope to meet with our judicial team and have that process complete. So I would suggest 7 days.
It's Nathan Godfrey, who's the CEO of Canterbury Rugby. We would love to talk to somebody from the Shirley Club about this. Let's go to the UK. One of the 3 attackers who killed 7 people and injured dozens of others near London Bridge on Saturday night was previously investigated by British security services, but had not been viewed as a serious threat. Not by them. Some in his own community thought he should be watched harder. Khurram Shahzad Butt, aged 27, was a British citizen born in Pakistan who was already known to police and Britain's domestic spy agency MI5. The second attacker has been named, a 30-year-old who police said claimed to be a Moroccan and Libyan. The third attacker has yet to be formally identified, but officials say they had no intelligence the attack was planned. More than 20 victims remain in hospital in a critical condition after the men drove across London Bridge, mowing down pedestrians before stabbing bystanders in the nearby Borough Market area. Bridget Burke has the latest.
Ladies and gentlemen, there will now be a minute's silence.
Londoners stopping to remember the victims of the London Bridge attack. Thousands gathered on the banks of the River Thames, braving the rain to pay their respects.
The vigil took place just a few hundred metres from where militants rammed into pedestrians on London Bridge before stabbing revellers on Saturday night, killing 7 and injuring dozens of others. London's Mayor Sadiq Khan told mourners that as a proud and patriotic British Muslim, he was disgusted at the attack.
London stands in defiance against this cowardly attack on our city, our people, our values and our way of life. As the Mayor of London, I want to send a clear message to the sick and evil extremists who commit these hideous crimes. We will defeat you. You will not win.
Mourners held signs with messages such as "Hate will not divide us" and "Stand up to racism," while others carried balloons shaped as hearts.
It's very emotional. It's a great city, it's very emotional. Why wouldn't it be important? How could anybody ignore this? Tragic. It's tragic for all the lives that are lost, including the 3. It's just senseless.
Members of London's Dawoodi Borough Muslim community laid flowers and a sign that read, "You are in our hearts and prayers. We stand united with you. Terrorists ain't no Muslims." Community member Muhammad Abdullah described the attack as barbaric.
Well, it was absolutely barbaric. This doesn't represent Islam. It's been said countless times before. This isn't the first time something like this has happened in the UK or America as well. But we reject it completely. We condemn it in the utmost way.
Christine Archibald, a 30-year-old Canadian who had worked in a shelter for the homeless before moving to Europe to be with her fiancé, has been confirmed as one of the victims of Saturday's attack. The family of 32-year-old man James McMullen also believe he is among the 7 dead. In an emotional statement, his sister Melissa McMullen said her brother's bank card was found on one of the bodies, but the police had yet to formally identify him.
While our pain will never diminish, it is important for us to all carry on with our lives in direct opposition to those who would try to destroy us. And remember that hatred is the refuge of small-minded individuals and will only breed more. This is not a cause we will follow despite our loss.
James's friend Andy Byers was out with him on Saturday night and last saw him outside the Barrow Boy and Banker pub in Borough High Street.
Yeah, we're just about to walk out. We finished our drinks and we all got rushed back inside. And then I was ringing him straight away as we were going up the stairs. But no, literally after being on the phone for him 5 minutes before, and I couldn't get through to him. It was just ringing and ringing. So that's when we started worrying, but I originally thought he might be downstairs in the bar, so I was hoping for the best. But then when it got to the point we weren't hearing from him, then that's when I phoned up Melissa the next morning, because I didn't want to alarm the family if he suddenly contacted me. Then I thought at this point that he was looking he could have been affected.
London's Mayor Sadiq Khan thanked the police, emergency service staff and people who risked their lives to save others on Saturday night.
Our city is filled with great sorrow and anger tonight, but also great resolve and determination, because our unity and love for one another will always be stronger than the hate of the extremists. This is our city, these are our values, and this is our way of life. London will never be broken by terrorism. We will step up the fight against extremism, and we will defeat the terrorists.
2 of the London Bridge terrorists have been named by Scotland Yard as Karam Shahzad Butt and Rashid Redouan, both from Barking. 7 women and 5 men aged between 19 and 60 have been arrested under the Terrorism Act in relation to the attack, while at least 20 victims remain in a critical condition in hospital. For Checkpoint, Bridget Burke.
And in Australia, the Prime Minister is demanding to know why the gunman responsible for yesterday's deadly siege in Melbourne was on parole given his violent criminal history. The gunman, Yaqub Khairi, murdered a man, took a woman hostage and then shot 3 police officers before he was shot dead in the Melbourne suburb of Brighton. Police investigating the siege say they're treating it as an act of terrorism, but the Chief Commissioner says the claim of responsibility from Islamic State should be regarded with scepticism. Here's the ABC's Stephanie Corsetti in Melbourne.
Yaqub Khairi had been on parole since last November. In the months since then, he had been compliant with curfews and drug test conditions, until that is last night when Victorian police were called to an address in Brighton where the 29-year-old had taken a woman hostage. They also found the body of a man they believe worked at the service departments. This morning, Victoria's Police Chief Commissioner Graham Ashton says Khairi was known to authorities, but he didn't raise any red flags in terms of terrorism.
He hasn't been someone that's really been a major concern to us in relation to terrorism aspects. It's more general criminal offending he's been involved with, so there really wasn't anything sitting in there of recent times that suggested that he was about to do this.
But police have confirmed he has a criminal background. He was also charged and acquitted over the planned Holsworthy Army Barracks attack. But whether he was acting on messages from overseas extremists yesterday is unclear. Islamic State has claimed the gunman was one of its soldiers. Police are also investigating a call they say was made from inside the apartment to Channel 7 with references made to Al-Qaeda. Graham Ashton again.
Certainly when police on the ground, counter-terrorism police, hundreds of police involved, plus the efforts of the Australian Federal Police capability as well. There's plenty of law enforcement effort going into making sure that we know everything that's sat behind this. Motivation of the individual, whether this was planned or spontaneous. And we'll certainly be driving to get to the bottom of that.
It's believed Khairi was at the apartment complex to meet a woman he contacted through an escort agency. The woman was unharmed after the gunman left the apartment and was shot dead when police returned fire.
Counter-terrorism police have been investigating this matter through the night. In relation to the offender, he is someone that was known to us as having a long criminal history, a whole range of offending going back many years. Most recently, he's done some prison time in relation to reckless intentionally caused injury, and whilst in prison was processed as well for an arson whilst in the correction system.
Victoria's Premier Daniel Andrews says he's open to changing the state's parole system.
But if there is more that needs to be done, if there are learnings, if there are further steps that the government needs to take to support the Chief Commissioner in his work with our partners, and we are very grateful to the Australian Federal Police and other security and intelligence agencies for the cooperative and partnership approach that they take to dealing with these issues. If there's more that needs to be done, of course we stand ready to do that.
The state opposition's Ed O'Donoghue agrees the incident raises questions about Victoria's parole rules.
We should always be prepared to strengthen and review the operation of the parole system. The parole system's undergone enormous change in recent years, but that doesn't mean that it could be open to further change.
Victoria Police and the Premier say Melbourne is under no ongoing threat, but Graham Ashton says the community must be vigilant.
We're in an unstable global environment. Look at what's happening in the UK, it's happening in Europe. We're working in an environment where there's ever-present risks. It's the risk we try and work on every day.
Police returned to Brighton today to collect evidence and reassure the community after yesterday's dramatic events. 2 injured police officers remain in hospital.
That report from the ABC. The Ministry of Education has expressed surprise at the revelation a primary school sent a 10-year-old home from school when she began menstruating because the school toilets had no suitable receptacle for sanitary products. An Otago University Medical School research fellow, Dr. Sarah Donovan, told RNZ she was contacted about the case by a GP who was concerned the girl was only allowed back to school when her family donated an appropriate bin to the school for the disposal of the products. She said the girl had been menstruating for a few months now, but was still choosing to stay at home sometimes because of the stigma of having been excluded from school. Anne-Marie May sought comment on the case and filed this report.
In a statement, Katrina Casey from the Education Ministry said if the incident did happen as reported, it is not a very caring way for the school to respond, nor is it sensible. She says most teachers and principals are very understanding of the health needs of their students, and the Ministry is confident that most, if not all, when faced with a young girl beginning menstruation, would simply organise a sanitary product disposal unit for the girls' toilets. Dr Sarah Donovan from the University of Otago's Public Health Department said the situation was brought to her attention by the 10-year-old's GP. She had since been speaking directly with the family and says the child's mother was upset by the principal's suggestion her daughter could go on the contraceptive pill.
She was pretty distraught because being 10, that's pretty young to get your period anyway, and she was just kind of coping with the self-management of that, and then had the kind of added level of stigma of being excluded from school.
Whangaparoa College students Melanie Wilcock and Rebecca Jacobs have organised a petition asking the government to remove GST from sanitary products. Melanie said she was appalled that a school would send a 10-year-old home while she has her period and says it's not fair that a natural process should affect a child's education.
I think she'd feel quite embarrassed because some girls take it as, oh, I'm a woman now and that sort of stuff. But if she's just been sent home for something that she can't control. I mean, I know it's not the school's fault and they probably were a bit shocked, but they should have dealt with it better.
The national president of the Principals Federation, Whetu Cormick, finds it difficult to comprehend that a child would be excluded from school while they are menstruating. He says at his own school, Bathgate Park in Dunedin, there are receptacles for girls to dispose of sanitary products, and he is sure other schools would also have them.
Not only for the adult staff, but also for young women to be able to use them if required. This would not be an unusual situation for teachers to be having to deal with from sort of year 5, 6 through to intermediate age. Definitely those schools would have processes in place to support the young woman.
The head of the School Trustees Association, Lorraine Kerr, says no school has ever contacted her association with problems associated with a student beginning menstruation. She says when a young girl began having periods at a primary school she was involved with, the situation was handled very easily.
We just went down to the local dairy, got a supply of sanitary products, talked to her, explained to her, phoned her parents, suggested she use the staff toilets as opposed to the school toilet to take away the stigma.
The Ministry of Education says it does not keep data on the facilities provided in girls' toilets at primary schools. It says schools make their own decisions about what is available based on the needs of their students, and the majority do a very good job. For Checkpoint, Anne-Marie May.
Coming up on Checkpoint, more on Rex Tillerson. Team New Zealand wins a race by default after a damaged boat forced BAR out of the water. Expressions of interest from companies prepared to keep the kiwi and pineapple lumps, and Rotary leaders put pressure on one of its Christchurch clubs after discovering it does not allow women to join. We'd love to hear from you. All feedback welcome. You can text us 2101. Of course, we're on Facebook, Checkpoint with John Campbell. Email checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. And don't forget, you can watch us online, Facebook Live, rnz.co.nz, Freeview Channel 50 and Face TV, which is Sky Channel 83. But first, with the 27 to 6 headlines, here's Katrina Batten. Bang on time, Katrina, right now.
Thank you. The United States has told New Zealand it intends to increase its involvement in the Asia-Pacific region. After meeting the Prime Minister Bill English and the Foreign Minister Jerry Brownlee in Wellington, the US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson told media the US remains fully committed to the region despite its withdrawal from trade and climate change agreements. The School Trustees Association says the family of a 10-year-old girl should not have had to pay for a sanitary disposal unit at her school. The child was initially sent home because the school had no facilities in the girls' toilets. The association's head, Lorraine Kerr, says no school has ever contacted them with problems about a student beginning menstruation. The Treaty Minister, Chris Finlayson, says not even the Pope would be able to help the Ngāpuhi settlement in its current state. Earlier, the Prime Minister told members of Tūhoranuku and Te Kotahitanga to sort out their disputes without any government help. It means a mediator will be appointed for the Ngāpuhi settlement process, and Mr Finlayson says this won't change until Ngāpuhi members say enough is enough and want to get on with it. The Christchurch City Council is considering taking on fast food outlets by providing more free tap water and space for community orchards and vegetable gardens. It'll vote on the idea this month as a way of tackling what it's calling food deserts, places where the only thing available to eat is junk food. The Victorian police are treating a siege in Melbourne last night as an act of terrorism after a claim by Islamic State that one of its fighters was responsible. The gunman was shot dead by the police after he killed the man in the foyer of an apartment block and held a woman hostage inside. The police say he had a long criminal history. Senior officials have confirmed that Yaqub Khairi was on parole for violent home invasion at the time of Monday's siege. Those are the headlines. I'm back at 6.
Thanks so much, Katrina. Let's get to the evening business news now with Jonathan Mitchell, who is beaming in from Wellington. Hi, Jono. Tonight, weaker than expected data pointing to softer economic growth.
That's right. This is the building and construction volumes, John, for the March quarter. Weaker than expected, weaker than the market was expecting, actually. These consent numbers and volumes fell 3.5%. The biggest contributor to that was a 7% fall in the non-residential volumes. This is the commercial space. That led the decline, along with a fall-off in the residential space as well. So not what the market was expecting. Analysts expected possibly a slight rise, and they're saying that this is probably going to be short-lived given the solid stream of consents coming through into the market at the moment. But they have highlighted the pressures as well. These are the things we've talked about in the past, the capacity constraints on construction, as well as the cost pressures, expected to keep a lid on activity in the months ahead. But as a result of today's falls in volumes, ASB Bank actually lowered their growth forecasts for the economy for the first 3 months of the year down to 0.5%. There has been a few numbers out there up to 1%, but ASB's picking 0.5%. Those official numbers come out next week. But on the flip side, other side of the coin, there were some upbeat numbers today for the first quarter in terms of wholesale trade. This was led by basic material wholesaling and motor vehicle parts wholesaling. And again, tomorrow we've got more numbers for the first quarter in terms of manufacturing. So that should just give a clear picture on where this first quarter really went leading up to the economic growth numbers next week.
Right, you'll have those manufacturing numbers tomorrow night, right? Dairy is giving commodity prices a boost. Jono?
That's right, yes. We had the ANZ Bank's commodity price index out for the month of May, up around 3% on the month before. Certainly horticulture coming into play here. A strong showing from horticulture led by new season fruit coming into the market. As well, yes, dairy played a part picking up in this monthly data. But to highlight the volatility, there's the overnight auction coming up tonight, John. The market is expecting whole milk powder to fall 3%, and that would follow a fairly good succession of rises over the past few months, but certainly whole milk powder likely to fall 3% overnight. We'll bring you those details tomorrow morning.
Thanks, Johnny. What did the markets do today?
The top 50 index fell a handful of points to 7,495, and the dollar is trading at 71.5 US cents, 95.5 Australian.
Jonathan Mitchell, our business reporter from Wellington. Thank you. Let's stick with business just a bit longer. As Cadbury owner Mondelez reviews expressions of interest in the confectionery brands it will no longer make in Dunedin, Checkpoint can confirm New Zealand confectionery makers are among those to have expressed interest, and that Mondelez has also received inquiries from companies with no previous confectionery history. The brands that will no longer be made in Dunedin if a deal isn't done include Pineapple Lumps, Jaffas, Pinky Bars and Buzz Bars. Earlier this year, the company announced it would stop manufacturing Cadbury products in Dunedin in March 2018 with a loss of 350 jobs. Now, if a deal can't be done, Mondelez will move their manufacturing to Australia. Among the front runners to take over in New Zealand is Rainbow Confectionery, based north of Dunedin in Oamaru. We tried to speak to Rainbow today, but they were unable to comment while considerations were taking place. Fair enough, but a source connected with Mondelez told us at least some of the expressions of interest are worthy of consideration, and it is not out of the question that a deal to retain manufacture in New Zealand in some shape or form can in fact be done. Obviously, we'll be keeping an eye on that story. Team New Zealand is 2/5 of the way to the America's Cup Challengers final after its opponents, BAR, withdrew from the day with damage. The unusual outcome and the 2 early points are critical in a semi-final series that might not run its full course if disrupted by the weather. And the other pairing, Dean Barker's SoftBank Team Japan, won one and lost one against the Swedes, Artemis. America's Cup reporter Todd Nile is in Bermuda.
BAR ground to a halt at Gate 2, its wing structure damaged, and both races forfeited. Team New Zealand's helmsman Peter Burling said the British team was clearly in trouble.
Well, you can obviously tell something bad's happened pretty quickly, when they stop. And for ourselves, we felt like we were fully prepared for a really good race, and obviously a bit of a shame we didn't get to have a good race there, but I'm sure they'll be back fighting tomorrow.
Obviously happy to be 2-0, but as you say, would you have rather have had a decent race on the way to 2-0?
Oh, for sure, we're all here to race, and we're all here to get better and improve. And now for ourselves, even though we weren't racing against another boat in that last race, we still did the pre-start at full noise, and we still did a fair few manoeuvres just to keep working on our boat handling.
BAR's Sir Ben Ainsley let out an audible groan on board when it happened and was clearly frustrated.
To lose 2 races like that, it was a tough way to go down, but we'll deal with it, we'll take it on the chin, and we'll come back tomorrow stronger.
You were fair flying going into that gate. Did you just overcook it or just do too much for the wing?
No, I mean, we were, we've obviously sailed these boats in much stronger conditions than today, and it was a pretty conventional mark rounding for us. The setup was fine, as it should be, and so it was kind of a freak failure or breakdown that we had.
Softbank's skipper Dean Barker was taking a glass half full view of his day, beating Artemis in the first race but losing the lead in the second. Barker's happy with his boat and his crew work, but he said that after listing all the things that went wrong in the second race.
We had a nice little lead again. We ended up splitting at the top gate, and we're just a little bit out of phase with the shifts on that run, which sort of cost us a bit of distance. And then we had a bad jibe right at the bottom gate, which sort of gave them even a bit more distance. And then we sort of probably chose the wrong bottom gate as well. And so the next thing we knew, they were sort of right back into it, and it was pretty tough from there.
Earlier in the day, a brief royal disruption for Team New Zealand as Spain's King Juan Carlos popped in for an hour as part of a tour of the Cup Village on a day in which it was closed to the public. Winds of up to 22 knots are forecast for tomorrow's semi-final continuation. Team New Zealand's early points are valuable. Should the worst happen and no more racing be possible before the scheduled start of the Challenger finals on Sunday, today's score would decide it. And in the other pair it would be Artemis as the most recent winner of a tied pair. In Bermuda, mo te hōtaka o te ahi, ko Todd Nile tēnei.
The search for a 29-year-old man who fell overboard in the Auckland harbour on Saturday night has been suspended, but his family say they're not giving up hope. Te Avita Kava of Mangere was on a charter boat for a friend's birthday when he went overboard at 9:20 that evening. The police dive squad, Eagle helicopter and search and rescue volunteers have scoured the sea and shore with help from his friends and family, of course. Eva Collette spoke to Mr. Kava's sister, Ali Sita Leki Lovo.
He was most likely to fall off just around here. So this is pretty much where the family just comes and, just hangs around and just hoping that we'll get some news or some sort of updates, and just hoping and praying really that they do find his body. I think for my family with this tragic, accident, I think we're praying and everything, but I think just to have his body come back home would give us closure.
Ms. Sitaleki Lovo says her brother's friends have told her he was taking pictures of the view when he fell through a barrier. She says he didn't know how to swim, and her family is now questioning whether the barrier, which she says came to thigh height, was safe enough. Ms. Sitaleki Lovo says her brother, a recent graduate from the Elan Christian Centre and Christian Ministry, was the backbone of her family.
He was always giving, really loving, and he just didn't know how to say no when people asked him, to help them with, financial anything. He would always go out his way just to help them out. He would, even at church stuff, he would just rock in and just bring the youth snacks or even a fundraising. We don't tell him to, but he just brings it and just to help out.
Ms. Sitaleki Lovo says she's been astounded by the support from the local community.
Just having them kind of just come and just wanting to offer their help and just trying since Saturday night, it kind of reflects a lot. Because that's something that my brother would have done. He's done in the past and stuff, but it's just beautiful. Just I ran into one of the ladies who she almost broke down in tears because she lost her father. Because when she was a little girl, he drowned, and It's like I kind of share that, some sort of pain with her, but it's just beautiful. Like, I've never met these people before. I don't have enough words to say thank you.
Ms Seteleki Lovo says if the official search stops, she will let her elders decide if the family will continue to search themselves.
That willingness of giving to others, we're just going to hold on to that and I'll continue that legacy, especially for myself and the rest of the family. Even though it's hard, but through God, everything's possible, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
The police and Maritime New Zealand are investigating the accident. The company that owns the charter boat, Red Boats, has not responded to RNZ's request for an interview. I tāmaki makoro mō te hōtako te ahiahi, ko Eva Colette tēnei.
Rotary leaders are putting pressure on one of its clubs in Christchurch after discovering it does not allow women to join. The Avonhead Rotary Club is understood to be the only club out of the 267 nationwide that excludes women. Rotary leaders, including one of its top-ranking officials, say they're shocked and dismayed by the club's stance and its refusal to change. Maya Burry reports.
Noel Trevaskis, the director for New Zealand, Australia and South Pacific regions of Rotary, says he's disappointed by the Avonhead Club's decision. In a statement, Mr Trevaskis says Rotary started taking female members in 1989, and the New Zealand branch now has one of the highest rates of female membership globally.
This to me is extremely disappointing, as Rotary for me has always been inclusive and not exclusive. I can assure people that the Rotary leadership will be working with the Rotary Club of Avonhead in the future and offering them guidance, as we would with all Rotary clubs presenting challenges to ongoing community success.
But Mr Trevaskis says every Rotary club is autonomous and is entitled to make its own decisions, like the unfortunate one of the Avonhead Rotary Club. The public image coordinator for Rotary in New Zealand and the Pacific is Liz Courtney. She says the club does not have a rule in their club constitution that excludes women membership. Rather, they just feel a certain way about it.
It's just a mood that they feel amongst their ageing population, and who are all men. That's the policy that they've come up with. That's their feeling about it.
But Liz Courtney says it would support the club changing its mood and feeling about having female members. That's a message backed by Janice Hughes, Rotary's district governor for the Lower South Island.
Diversity is such a big, important concept within our clubs that I thought it must have been incorrect when it was actually raised with me. I didn't think that there were any clubs around that actually still had, any policy around discriminating based on gender at all, and I find that, very disappointing.
The Human Rights Commission says private clubs can regulate their activities as they choose, but it says just because something is legal doesn't make it right. Janice Hughes says it's unfortunate that Avonhead's policy may distract from the important work Rotary is doing. She says in some clubs in her district, women make up 70% of membership.
To have public perception changed or sullied in some way by this particular issue is very, very disappointing. And I think the point of this is we want it to be seen as only one club that hopefully will change its view reasonably soon.
The Hastings Area Rotary Club also only has male members, but its president, Angus Thompson, says it is not its policy to exclude women from joining. Meanwhile, the Avonhead Rotary Club declined to be interviewed by RNZ today. Its president, John Ashcroft, says it has no comment to make about its policy or whether it intends to change it. In Christchurch for Checkpoint, Maya Burry.
The US State Department wants Arab countries to resolve their differences after 6 states suspended diplomatic ties with Qatar. The countries included Saudi Arabia and Egypt, and they accused the Gulf nation of supporting terrorism. The Qatari Foreign Ministry denies this and says the measures were unjustified. In Qatar, there have been reports of people stockpiling food. The BBC's security correspondent Frank Gardner has more.
Saudi TV today airing a very public quarrel between some of the world's richest nations. Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the UAE, as well as Egypt, have all cut diplomatic ties to Qatar. They've imposed an air, land and sea embargo on the country, causing some panic buying. They're accusing this gas-rich Gulf state of funding terrorism and helping Iran destabilize the region. Qatar strongly denies it. It was President Trump's recent visit to Riyadh that emboldened the Saudis. Its leaders now feel they've got a green light from Washington to get tough on their rivals and adversaries. But Qatar hosts US Central Command's airbase for the entire Middle East, and the US needs this spat to be resolved quickly.
What we're witnessing is a growing list of some irritants in the region that have been there for some time. And obviously they have now bubbled up to a level that countries decided they needed to take action in an effort to have those differences addressed. We certainly would encourage the parties to sit down together and address these differences.
6 Arab nations have lined up to accuse Qatar and its ruling emir of supporting the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas to promote an Islamist agenda across the region, of supporting violent jihadists in Syria, something the Saudis are also suspected of, and of hosting the Al Jazeera TV channel, a constant thorn in the side of Arab rulers. So, how far will this go?
I don't think the UAE and Saudi Arabia will or want to interfere to overthrow the regime in Qatar. They just want Qatar to commit to what's been agreed on.
Qatar has invested billions of pounds in Britain. It owns the London Shard, Harrods, luxury hotels, property and bank shares. Qatar's embassy in London is making no comment this evening. But this is an escalating row between close allies of Britain's in the Gulf. Qatar will not be able to endure this sort of isolation for long, and looming on the horizon is an important date on the calendar. In just 5 years' time, the FIFA Football World Cup is due to be held in Qatar. Already a controversial choice of venue, this would be all but impossible if this row is not resolved by then.
The BBC's Frank Gardner. The Christchurch City Council is considering taking on fast food outlets by offering more healthy options such as tap water and fruit from its own edible gardens. The steps are seen as a way to tackle what is called food deserts, places where it's difficult to find anything but junk food to eat, basically. Conan Young reports.
The draft Healthy Food Action Plan talks about creating an oasis of healthy options in the city's food deserts as a way to combat the influence of fast food. The proposal is a compromise solution following calls from the community for a bylaw to be used to prevent junk food outlets setting up near schools, something the council says it cannot do. A backer of the plan, Councillor Aaron Kewen, says the measures could be as simple as putting in more drinking water fountains or planting fruit trees.
Kids given the option will grab fruit off a tree. I think we all did it when we were younger, probably even got in trouble for it now and then. Well, we're going to take the opposite approach and make sure those fruit trees are growing in a lot of neighbourhoods and people can, steal fruit from the tree whenever they want.
Aaron Kewen says the plan looks at repurposing the old tea rooms at the Botanic Gardens, once the place to get a custard square and a pie, as a place where people could be taught how to grow their own food and how to cook it.
A lot of people would have seen some of the work that Jamie Oliver's done when he's gone into low decile schools and taught the children about what they're eating and about food, and it changes them dramatically. There are schools with hundreds of children and none obese. That's a clear example of what some good education and motivation can do in a community.
The Healthy Food Action Plan has the backing of the principal of the low decile Linwood Avenue School, Blair Dravitsky. He says the junk food joints across the road from his school are all too good at luring his students with $1 frozen soft drinks or ice creams.
When they're so cheap too, it's not as if mum and dad are giving them $5 to go buy their lunch. They, $1 is pocket money for a lot of our kids, so they can bring it, and mum and dad don't even know they're stopping in, so to speak, as they walk to school.
Blair Dravitsky says if free fruit was available from trees in the neighbourhood, he's sure his students would choose this option instead.
Whatever they choose to plant, it'd be really exciting for the kids to be able to try some new stuff and, even use them in cooking or other things, so you're developing that community impression as well, where if they're an apple tree, to go home and help mum bake an apple crumble or help mum make a jam or jelly or something like that.
A Canterbury Horticultural Society spokesperson, Michael Coulter, says his members are standing by ready to help if the council adopts the plan. He says education is the key.
We found there's like what we call a lost generation of gardeners. So that's people in about the 35 to 45 age group who are beginning to get to the stage where they've got teenage children or the children are beginning to get off their hands and they want to do gardening and they don't know where to start because their parents never did it.
Councillor Kewen says the initiative would be paid for within existing budgets and could be as simple as the council making land available for community groups to plant trees and vegetables. It will be voted on by the full council later this month. In Ototahi for Checkpoint, ko Konanyang tēnei.
Let's head south from Christchurch to the Catlins, one of the country's most beautiful and least populated regions. Nestled, I guess, between Dunedin and Invercargill, the area's rugged coastline and native forests are a big draw card for the surging number of tourists coming to New Zealand. Now, visitor numbers to the region have jumped 15% in the past year and by at least a third since 2008. That's given locals new income, but also left them cleaning up after careless visitors. As part of RNZ's Is This the Brighter Future series, our Otago Southern reporter Ian Telfer and videographer Rebecca Parsons-King went to the Catlins to meet one tourist operator.
He's one of our oldest horses. The wee matriarch of the group.
Cara Mayer from Catlins Horse Riding is passionate about her animals and her region.
Catlins is a special place. It's the environment, it's the rugged beauty, you know, it's the community spirit, it's, you know, the simple things in life. The blue skies, the seas, the green hills, the forest, the wildlife, the sandy beaches. But we are pretty southern, so it's rough, it's rugged, we get winds, we get snow. We're not far from Antarctica, so it does get cold, but the cold makes you appreciate the warm days.
So showing tourists her home from horseback is a natural fit. Based at her parents' organic sheep farm, Cara, her husband Neil and other family members take 500 visitors a year on everything from short pony rides around the yard to romantic beach treks. She started the business 15 years ago and says word got out pretty fast.
Oh, I think the first season I had about 30 people. The second season I had over 30, I think, in 1 month alone, in January.
But it hasn't all been plain sailing. There's the marketing, the bookwork and myriad safety rules. And then there's just the nature of the industry.
Tourism's fickle, the weather's fickle, and not everyone wants to ride in the rain. It's not pleasant if the weather's really horrible. It's not pleasant for us, it's not pleasant for the horses. It's not safe. So it varies a lot depending on what the weather's doing, who's around.
But there are national forces at work too. Since it came to power in 2008, the National-led government has pushed tourism hard, doubling the marketing spend and opening the gates to an extra 1 million visitors. Cara says the Catlins used to be New Zealand's best-kept secret, but the secret's definitely out now with some unfortunate consequences.
One of the biggest challenges we have with tourism in the Catlins now is freedom camping, and it's not a Catlins problem, it's a New Zealand problem. And it's difficult because as Kiwis we like to just be able to go and camp wherever we can, but there's a lot of people out there that don't respect the environment, they don't realise the impact that crapping in the bushes has on us personally. It's not nice when your dog jumps off the four-wheeler and rolls in human crap and jumps back on beside you. It's not good for the wildlife. There's a lot of disease in the yellow-eyed penguins, which is really rare, and that's possibly coming from human contamination.
Cara says the tourism boom's been good and bad, but the government should have been more careful to manage the surging numbers.
People have to think of the bigger picture. It's all very well bringing in millions of tourists or however many come in, but we need to make sure that they're coming for the right reasons and they're respecting our country. There's a lot of people coming in with next to no money. They buy cheap cars, they don't have insurance. You know, we had one take out 6 posts in our fence. They could have ended up upside down in a ditch if they hadn't hit our fence, which stopped them rolling and turning up upside down. You know, we don't want to go around the farm and find someone dead in a car.
Cara has a lot on her mind. She and Neil are expecting their first child, and she may have to take on more staff. She says her dream is just to keep going and to keep the business sustainable.
But we don't want to go big and corporate, we want to keep small and personal. That's what people love about coming to the Catlins, about doing the horse riding. You know, it's family orientated, it's personal, it's not just numbers on backs. It's about getting to know the people and letting them get to know the Catlins and the farm.
In Tufa, and Rebecca Parsons-King with that report from the Catlins. Really beautiful part of the world. One of the most magic days I ever had was visiting Honetu Whare when he lived there in a little place up above the beach. Superb. 30 seconds before 6, after 6 o'clock. Who is Rex Tillerson? He's been in New Zealand today, admittedly not for long. We're going to look at his biography and hear some of what was discussed while he was here. We're also going to hear about the roughly 200 people who stood in pretty foul conditions outside Parliament to protest against his visit, and a small and rather eccentric mystery from Dunedin, the road cone that has somehow made its way onto, well, one of the highest architectural points in the city.
RNZ News at 6. Ngā mihi nui, good evening. Ko Katrina Batanaho. The American Secretary of State has thanked New Zealand for the contribution it's making in Iraq. Rex Tillerson made a flying visit to New Zealand where he met with the Prime Minister Bill English and the Foreign Minister Jerry Brownlee. The joint training mission in Iraq, the decision of the US to withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord and regional security were all discussed. Mr English says there was no specific request for New Zealand to increase its contribution to Iraq or Afghanistan, other than what's already on the table. After the meeting, Mr Tillerson expressed his thanks for what New Zealand's already doing.
We are deeply appreciative of New Zealand's troops in the Middle East and this really important role they're playing to train security forces as we liberate areas that have been under ISIS control.
Rex Tillerson. The Canterbury Rugby Union is investigating a complaint that a woman was racially abused by a man believed to be a coach at a Christchurch rugby club. The Shirley Rugby Club is meeting tonight to discuss allegations that a grandmother of a player in a junior team was sworn at in a car park by a man understood to be a coach at the club. The Canterbury Rugby Union's Chief Executive Nathan Godfrey told Checkpoint it got a complaint from the woman yesterday morning.
Now we're in a position where we can follow through and process, and that process includes a complaints review officer who's been appointed to the case. They're currently investigating, and once we have all the facts on the table, then we'll follow that through and certainly take action where appropriate.
Nathan Godfrey says it's hoping the investigation will be completed within a week. A Rotary district governor is advising a Christchurch club to stop excluding women. The Avonhead Rotary Club is understood to be the only club out of the 267 nationwide that doesn't allow female membership. Janice Hughes is Rotary's district governor for the Lower South Island, covering from Timaru to Invercargill. Mrs Hughes says at some clubs in her district, women make up over half of the membership. She says she was surprised to learn the Avonhead Club has a male-only policy.
Diversity is such a big, important concept within our clubs that I thought it must have been incorrect when it was actually raised with me. I didn't think that there were any clubs around that actually still had, any policy around discriminating based on gender at all, and I find that, very disappointing.
Janice Hughes says she hopes the Rotary Club will change its policy soon. 3 early childhood organisations have united to call on the government to increase their funding. Kindergartens New Zealand, the Educational Institute and Early Childhood New Zealand say quality will suffer unless the government provides more money. Claire Wells from the Kindergartens group says per child funding has not increased in real terms since 2008.
Overall, there has been no increase in the operational costs to early childhood services. So over that period of time, while there's been no funding coming into the sector, there has been around about a 12% increase in the costs for services. So that just becomes untenable, really.
Claire Wells says the government needs to restore a higher rate of funding for early childhood services that hire only qualified teachers. How to cut down on the number of cars clogging Auckland roads is under investigation. The Mayor, Phil Goff, says on average there are just 1.3 people in each car, and with 800 extra cars coming onto the city's roads each week, something has to change. Laura Tupou reports.
The Ministry of Transport and Auckland Council are investigating options for curbing car numbers. Phil Goff says the results aren't likely to be known until the end of the year, but increasing the number of people in cars is something that's being looked at. Central city businesses have mixed views on whether this would affect their profits. Those who rely on inner city workers don't think it will, but those whose customers travel in especially, or who have an older client base with higher mobility needs, say they will be hit hard. Ko Laura Tupou Ho.
A proposal to plant fruit trees and build more drinking water fountains in Christchurch has the backing of a school principal worried about the popularity of fast food outlets. The Christchurch City Council plan, to be voted on later this month, are seen as a way to tackle what it's calling food deserts, places where it's difficult to find anything but junk food to eat. The principal of Linwood Avenue School, Blair Dravitsky, says if fruit was available from trees in the neighbourhood, he's sure his students would choose that instead of fast food.
Whatever they choose to plant, it'd be really exciting for the kids to be able to try some new stuff and, even use them in cooking or other things, so you're developing that community impression as well, where if they're an apple tree, go home and help mum bake an apple crumble or help mum make a jam or jelly or something like that.
Blair Dravitsky. It's 6:05. To sport, and the Hurricanes assistant coach John Plumtree says it's unlikely Dane Coles will be available for the British and Irish Lions series. The hooker, who's been out with concussion since March, is not playing in the Hurricanes Super Rugby clash with the Chiefs on Friday. Plumtree says Coles' ongoing concussion symptoms are bad news for the All Blacks. Their first test against the Lions is on June the 24th. The New Zealand cricket coach Mike Hesson says England is the team to beat at the Champions Trophy. The two sides meet in Cardiff tonight, with England coming off a big win over Bangladesh, while New Zealand's game against Australia was rained off. The Black Caps did manage to score 291 off 45 overs in that abandoned game. Hesson says England are the tournament favourites.
Especially in these conditions, their batting lineup is aggressive. And if you don't get it wrong, you don't take wickets, then you can chase a very high score. So from a bowling point of view, they've got a lot of variety. So once again, we know we're going to have to play well, probably as well as we did, if not a little bit better.
Mike Hesson. Australia had a second game abandoned because of the weather this morning against Bangladesh. The country's top-ranked doubles player, Michael Venus, will attempt to be the first New Zealand male to make a Grand Slam semi-final since 1995 overnight. Michael Venus and his American partner, Ryan Harrison, will take on the 7th seeds Ivan Dodig of Croatia and the Spaniard Marcel Granollers for a place in the French Open doubles semi-finals. That's the news.
This week on Night Stewart, Jeremy Spur talks about mutton birding on Rakiura, Stewart Island. Michael Phillip on the benefits of swearing when it comes to reducing physical pain. Tristan Donovan tells the story of a game devised over a century ago to demonstrate the damage property tycoons could do to a community. These days we call it Monopoly. And there's a Sonic Tonic dedicated to telephones on nights this week after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Met service weather through to midnight tomorrow. Northland, Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula, cloudy periods and scattered showers. Waikato to Kapiti, including Bay of Plenty in the central high country, mostly fine with isolated showers. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, a few showers mainly about the coast, fine spells increasing. Wairarapa Upper, mostly cloudy with occasional showers. Wellington, cloudy periods, a few showers today, the odd shower possible tomorrow morning and evening. Marlborough, apart from the Kaikoura coast, also Nelson, Buller and Westland, fine. The Kaikoura coast and Canterbury, cloudy periods and isolated showers. Otago and Southland, fine today, cloudy periods and a few showers tomorrow. Fiordland, rain developing tonight, clearing tomorrow morning, but a few showers remaining in the south. And the Chatham Islands, the odd shower today, rain developing later tomorrow. It's exactly 6:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Thank you very much, exactly, Katrina Batten. The US Secretary of State arrived in Wellington today on a very fleeting visit, appearing alongside Prime Minister Bill English at a media conference, a short one. There was just 5 questions answered. He was asked about his boss, US President Donald Trump, whether the withdrawals from the TPP and the Paris Climate Agreement meant Trump was unpredictable, and whether the US was leaving China to control the Asia-Pacific region.
So I don't think anyone should interpret that the U.S. has somehow stepped away from these issues or is seeking to isolate itself. Indeed, one of the reasons I'm in the region. One of the reasons Vice President Pence has already been to the region, Secretary Mattis has been to the region, is to reaffirm to everyone that the United States views this region of the world extremely important to both our national security interest and our own economic and prosperity interest. And I think you can expect, in fact, to see an elevated level of engagement to that you saw in the past 8 years.
Secretary Tillerson was asked about his expectation of New Zealand's commitment to combating terror, a question he largely avoided, only saying that every country's contribution was important. Mr Tillerson said he spoke about North Korea at length with Bill English, including ways New Zealand can help disarm the increasingly aggressive nuclear nation, and he issued a warning to China regarding the South China Sea.
We had a good conversation about the ways New Zealand can support us in that regard, both in terms of reaffirming that message, but then backing it up in whatever small ways are possible to put action behind the message that North Korea needs to change its path. With respect to China's activities in the South China Sea, we share the same view that freedom of navigation, both of the waters but also the airways, is vital to global economic prosperity. It's vital to the growth of economic prosperity in the region. And anything that threatens that threatens not just this region, but the entire world's economic prosperity. So we are, I think, of one mind with many others in the region as well in conveying to China that these actions they're taking to build islands and, more alarmingly, to militarize these islands threatens the stability that really has served China as well or better than anyone in terms of China's ability to grow its economy. It's been this very stable environment that has existed. These actions of theirs threaten that stability, and we ask that they cease those activities.
Now Secretary of State, of course, Rex Tillerson was another of Donald Trump's outsiders, although that depends on the question, outside of what. Not a career politician, he was a very particular kind of corporate diplomat, a man who got deals done, big deals. So in Washington he's new, but he's certainly not an innocent.
Hi, I'm the new guy.
True and not. New to Washington politics, yes, but the road behind him is a long one.
I thought I'd be entering retirement this spring after 4 decades of business experience.
And as we know, that was with Exxon, which he joined in 1975, then ExxonMobil, which he became chief executive of. If you'll excuse the petrol pun, Rex Tillerson is driven. Steve Cole, who wrote a history of the company, told the BBC's Mark Coles about Tillerson's ascent.
It's a very rule-bound, old-fashioned company. Tillerson rose through the exploration and production division of the company, making deals with host governments. And Tillerson rose because he was successful at negotiating with governments, many of them authoritarian, and most notably in Russia.
Yes, Russia, where Tillerson made a name for himself as a deal maker and a man who could open doors. A former president of rival oil company Shell is John Hofmeister. He told the BBC,
Rex had been a pioneer for ExxonMobil in a couple of different fronts, particularly leading the effort on Sakhalin-1, which was a major Russian project in the 1990s, where for the first time a publicly held company like ExxonMobil was getting into the drilling business in Russia. So that was an unprecedented move.
And it afforded him the kind of access that now makes Washington insiders believe that Tillerson's appeal to Trump was not only what he knew, but who. Here's Steve Cole talking to Mark Coles again.
Circa 2000, at that point, Tillerson was already on the case in Russia for ExxonMobil, and Tillerson came in and out, and when Putin arose from the ashes of the Yeltsin years, he would have been someone that Tillerson dealt with fairly early on. So Tillerson saw all of this consolidation of power around Putin and managed to keep Exxon in Russia.
Putin's Russia, lest anyone for a moment forget. And their relationship grew closer, with Putin awarding Tillerson an Order of Friendship medal. And when the US imposed sanctions on Russia following its annexation of Crimea, Tillerson spoke out against the sanctions. For John McCain, the closeness of his relationship with Russia doesn't qualify Tillerson, it disqualifies him.
I'm very concerned about someone who took a friendship award from Vladimir Putin, who is a butcher. Actually, what Vladimir Putin is, he's a KGB agent. That's all. He wants to restore the Russian Empire.
John McCain, In Trump's Moscow-gazing White House, this is a strength. Outside it, a weakness. Here's Marco Rubio asking a very pointed question of Rex Tillerson at a Senate hearing.
Is Vladimir Putin a war criminal?
I would not use that term.
Call as you like. Moscow, Washington, Wellington, the man who arrived in the capital today may have received some kind of remonstrations from Bill English and Jerry Brownlee about America's departure from the Paris Accord, but it's probable he took them in his stride. Besides, if muttering asides occur in such meetings, he may well have agreed with them. He'd lobbied Trump to stay in the agreement, and when the president made his departure announcement, Rex Tillerson, US Secretary of State, wasn't there. That doesn't make the oil man a greenie. He's a pragmatist and a handshake diplomat. Belonging is where the action is. And when he was asked about climate change by Senator Bob Corker, Tillerson's answer was so non-committal it almost disappeared.
You believe that human activity based on your belief in science is contributing to climate change?
The increase in the greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere are having an effect. Our ability to predict that effect is very limited.
And it was climate change and the Paris Accord that got about 200 protesters out in the pouring rain in Wellington today. Earlier, 4 Greenpeace protesters climbed a large crane on a worksite behind Parliament. They've since been arrested. Here's our political reporter, May Heron.
What do we want?
Climate action.
Who needs to lead it?
Bill.
What do we want?
Climate action.
Who needs to lead it?
Bill.
With brollies in one hand and placards in the other, around 200 people were drenched as they turned up to protest in the rain outside the front lawn in Parliament. Their signs were aimed at the US President Donald Trump for pulling out of the Paris Climate Change Agreement and as Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, a former head of the oil company Exxon. The chair of the climate change group 350 Aotearoa, Aaron Packard, says Bill English needs to send a strong message to the US, including bringing in possible sanctions.
Over 100 mayors and leaders of states have stepped up to say they're going to fill the gap where Trump has pulled out. And so actually he needs to put pressure and show that there's direct consequences for pulling out of the Paris Agreement.
This morning at around 6 o'clock, 4 Greenpeace activists scaled a large crane on a worksite near Parliament, hanging a large banner reading "Climate Change, Huge Mistake, Resist." At the protest, Greenpeace climate campaigner Kate Simcock told the crowd it was important they stand up for the planet, and their message to the government is clear.
Take real climate action. That means stop looking for deep sea oil. It means stop burning coal, stop intensifying dairy. And the time is now. It's time to step up and show true leadership.
The Labour MP Grant Robertson says the government's response so far has been weak.
Paula Bennett did say it was disappointing. That's a joke. It's not disappointing, the US and Donald Trump leaving the Paris Agreement. It's immoral and it is a crime against future generations.
The Greens co-leader James Shaw told protesters this is an issue New Zealanders care about.
I'm inspired by the fact that you have chosen to come out here in the cold and the wet and to condemn the American actions on the day that Rex Tillerson, T-Rex, the dinosaur, is visiting New Zealand.
Protesters also brought along a life-size mannequin of Donald Trump and encouraged people to throw water bombs and objects at it. From Parliament for Checkpoint, May Heron.
Just before we move on, some breaking news. Checkpoint has confirmed an emergency meeting is underway at the Bluff Rugby Club to discuss the oyster parasite, Rotary Austria. The infectious organism is not harmful to people, but if it spreads, it could devastate the region's flat oyster industry as it did in the early 1990s and the early 2000s. The Ministry for Primary Industries confirmed last Wednesday that the parasite was detected in 2 Stewart Island oyster farms. The meeting began just after 5 o'clock this evening, and we'll bring you more information as it comes to hand. Obviously, Morning Report will look at this tomorrow. Authorities are now looking at how to curb cars from clogging up roads in Auckland City. Mayor Phil Goff says the Council and the Ministry of Transport are investigating options, and he's particularly keen on finding ways to encourage ride sharing. He says some ideas being discussed include congestion charges, car sharing, and having priority lanes for cars with more people in them. Laura Tupou reports.
The car occupancy rate in Auckland is currently only 1.3 people per car, but the city's population is growing by 45,000 people a year, and each week there's an extra 800 cars on roads. The Mayor Phil Goff says something needs to change, and a key area of interest is getting more passengers in each car.
One way of encouraging people to make better use of existing car space would be a greater use of T3 lanes. They've proven really effective in a number of places in encouraging people to car share, because you've got a lane set aside that enables you to get to your destination more quickly.
Phil Goff says using apps for ride sharing could be an outcome. So, what do Aucklanders think of this idea?
I think it's great because the traffic is getting insane, out of hand.
Yeah, sheer costs coming into the city, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. If it was, something online where you could register and, yeah, sure, why not? But public transport is best and we need more of that in Auckland.
Yeah, I'd do it if it was organised, correctly, so it's easy to find another car.
I think I would, if it was something that was convenient for me, where they're maybe picking me up near my house, drop me off near my place of work.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it just makes more sense to carpool and, yeah, I mean, you see how congested the roads are, so why not?
Businesses in the city centre had mixed views about whether fewer cars in the city would impact profits.
I don't think it will, because most of people who working or doing they work in the CBD, they usually get train or bus. Otherwise they will waste time looking for car park around. I don't think it will affect businesses in city.
If our businesses depend on local Kiwi customers, then it will. Then it won't, because about 50% of our customers relying on tourism, so tourists, so they don't normally have a vehicle to come to the city.
We have a lot of clients that are over their 60s or very, very old customers that's been really dedicated to our business, and a lot of them live in rural areas in the outer skirts of Auckland, and if we have this plan, it will be very hard for them to come into the store.
One woman who generally drives in alone from Kumeu, an area about 25 kilometres away, says she's on board with measures to increase the number of people in cars.
I find definitely coming into the city centre there's more of a variety of shops than I find in the malls, so it's actually worthwhile coming in and spending a little bit longer sometimes looking for car parking to have more variety and come to some of the individual shops like one we're in.
So if you had to car share, would you come into the city?
It would be great to be able to car share actually. Me and my husband try and commute in together to save on parking and save on another car on the motorway. So yeah, initiatives like that would be really good.
Mayor Phil Goff says improving public transport is also key.
Once we've got the city rail link in, that will double the capacity of heavy rail. And I'd like to see light rail. That's a really efficient way of moving people around a city, and we should be probably starting with the CBD through to the airport. You can't be a gateway city and have your gateway congested in the way that it is today.
Mr Goff says the study is likely to be completed towards the end of the year. Only then will the council be able to discuss what measures might be taken. Mō te hotaka o te ahiahi, ko Laura Tupou ho.
We're going to go back to Bluff. We were just talking about Bluff before. Breaking news, emergency meeting has just finished at the Bluff Rugby Club with more than 100 people gathered to discuss this oyster parasite. Willie Calder is a fourth-generation oyster man. Willie, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, John.
Nice to talk to you. Nice to have you on the wireless with us. And what's the latest from the meeting?
Well, John, it was. I called a meeting last night, an urgent meeting. Roughly around 200 Bluff people of the community turned up, and also people from Invercargill, Tim Shadbolt, Gary Tongs, the Mayor of Invercargill and the Southland District Council Mayor, the Mayor of Bluff, Raymond Fife. Those three chaired the meeting between them, and we had scientists from NIWA, head scientists from NIWA, Keith Michael there, and it was well put together meeting. It went well. Did you call this, Willie? Yeah, I got off my bum last night. We need action, yeah. Yeah, okay, so tell me, what's the situation now? There were 2 farms in Stewart Island, right, where Bonamia was found, is that right? Correct. It's a new type of Bonamia. It's from Europe, first detected in the Marlborough Sounds on the farms there in January 2015, and it's popped up somehow on the farms at Stewart Island. Right. 2 farms at Stewart Island, yeah. And where do you farm? Are you out in Fovo Strait there? Yeah, we don't farm at all, John.
Well,
Our fisheries are wild fishery.
Yeah, sorry, it's a stupid question. Yeah, if the famous
only
bluffies,
commercial
right?
wild fishery left in the world.
Yeah, that was, and I'm very partial to the bluffies, so forgive my ignorance. So you go out, you dredge in Fovo Strait. So is there Bonamia out there?
Not the one from Melbourne. No, it's just on 2 farms in Big Glory Inlet and Patterson's Inlet. It's the only place it's been detected so far. It was detected on the 24th of May. We found out last Thursday, and we've got to act fast.
And so when you say act fast, boy, we're talking some fast-moving waters around there. How do you stop the parasite spreading?
The parasite will spread rapidly once that oyster dies. At the moment, apparently they haven't died, but they are infected. They will die eventually, and when they die, that's when we're in the gun. Yeah.
So one of the suggestions is what? Get them up before they die?
That was 100% agreement at that meeting tonight that they've got to come out of the water.
Okay, and so they're completely unanimous. There's no one, even the poor buggers who have these the parasite on their farms in Stewart Island, no one's opposing that?
There was oyster farmers there, and even they agreed from Stewart Island. I don't think the ones that had the parasite, the Bonamia parasite on their farms were there. I'm not too sure, but there was other oyster farmers from over Stewart Island, and they agreed with everybody at the meeting.
Okay. Yeah. Willie, you're 4th generation of Bluff oyster fishermen. That's an extraordinary family lineage. And what's it like when Bonamia goes through? You've had it a couple of times before, right? In the early 90s, it was particularly bad, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, we had a bad outbreak in 87 and another one just about as bad in 2000. But this is a different strain of Bonamia, John. We can deal with our one. We've lived with our one for the last 30 years since the first outbreak I've seen. We know how to live with it. But this one, once it's in the water, you cannot get it out. Once those oysters start dying, it's there for good. Like in Europe, they've had it on the farms there. It's completely wiped them out. They've taken every structure, every oyster out of their farms, out of their bays, left it alone for 6 or 7 years, put oysters from a hatchery that had no signs of the disease in them, and within a couple of weeks they're all dead of it again. So.
Oh my goodness. And so what you're describing, which is the absolute preciousness of the uniqueness of your bluffies that, as you say, are a wild fishery, you simply can't have this parasite in there, can you? Full stop.
Full stop, dead right. You know, it would just about be the end of us, I'd say, John. Like, you can't eradicate it. Once it's there, it's there for good.
And are you getting assistance from MPI?
MPI were there, and they've taken our concerns aboard. They know we want action tomorrow, not next week, tomorrow. There's another meeting in Wellington tomorrow, an action meeting, and hopefully we get the right results. You know, like, this is different than Marlborough. Oysters in Marlborough are only on farms.
Yeah, this is, yeah.
This disease is on a farm. Our fisheries between Stewart Island and Bluff, and we've got to protect it.
Here, Willie Calder, who was a 4th generation oysterman, joining us from that meeting at the Bluff Rugby Club. And I think probably that was the first time that I had appreciated the seriousness of the situation. Thank you, Willie. Just before we go tonight, if you live in Dunedin and you're wondering how a road cone found its way atop the highest turret on the Fortune Theatre, you are most certainly not alone. Fortune Theatre set designer Peter King says it appeared out of nowhere. We, of course, thought it was a fantastic piece of guerrilla marketing for their upcoming season, and we put that to Mr. King, who denied it.
Well, I think it's a great idea, but unfortunately I get that really strange feeling downstairs when I go above about 12 feet.
So it wasn't you? Was it the theatre's marketing department?
Well, I thought it was the marketing department. I tried to corner them, but they wouldn't actually fess up to it. But I suspect it was the mountaineering department at the university.
who on the face of it have some kind of death wish, don't they? Because it's not an easy place to get to, is it?
I don't know about. I think if you're a mountaineer, you'll probably find it quite a challenge, but otherwise, I find it very difficult.
and it's still there because
No one can get it down.
No one can get it down.
I think the people who put it up there should take it away, but I'm not so sure about that.
No.
Look, anyway.
Yeah, but it's nice publicity for the theatre. So tell us how the fortune's going.
I think it's going okay. We're just about to launch into 12th night, so I think that if anybody can come up with a really good story of, or even the people who actually did it, fess up to it, write it into marketing@fortunetheatre.co.nz and we'll give them 2 free tickets.
Excellent. So, hold on a sec. 2 free tickets to the people who confess to having done it, because as you say, we're now talking. Yeah.
Well, I know we don't support criminal acts, but at the same time, it is rather amusing.
Yeah, my boss Pip is just suggesting in my ear that 2 for the people who put it up and maybe 2 more for the people who go and get it down, right?
Not that I'm encouraging people to actually take risks.
No, we absolutely want to stress that.
So I think maybe whoever did it should come forth.
Okay, what's that address again?
The marketing@fortunetheatre.co.nz.
Okay, will you let us know if you hear from them?
Yeah, I will indeed.
Okay.
Your story wins a prize.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Lovely to talk to you, Peter, and break a leg for the season.
Hey, thank you, man. Goodbye.
If you were watching that, the sky in Dunedin was so blue today that it was almost like someone was making it up. Just before we go, the New Zealand Building Code requires all buildings of public use to have adequate facilities for sanitary products available in female ablutions. The school, if what we've been reporting is correct, are breaking the law. Thank you for that feedback and good night.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson discussed regional security and defended America's decision to withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord during a flying visit to Wellington. The Canterbury Rugby Union is investigating a complaint of racial abuse by a man believed to be a coach at a Christchurch club. Early childhood groups are warning that quality education will suffer because of chronic underfunding. Community orchards and more drinking fountains are part of Christchurch City Council's plan to counter the proliferation of fast food outlets. How to cut down on the number of cars clogging Auckland's roads is under investigation. With 800 extra cars coming onto the city's roads each week, it's a huge problem. Our next news and weather is at 7.
Visit rnz.co.nz for trusted news from New Zealand.